off of it. How is everybody doing today? Welcome back to another edition of Boys in the Zone. This podcast is brought to you by the Grid Network. That is GRYD Network. If you have not already, check them out on YouTube, Twitter, Apple, and Spotify podcasts, all of those things. We have a whole host of sports. But this one is only Cowboys. It's Boys in the Zone, and we have a really fun guest today. A guy I've been following since he had like 400 followers on Twitter. Now he's blown up a little bit, and a well-respected draft savant, in my opinion, for Pick Six Sports Media. Hopefully, I got that right. But it's Dom White. How you doing tonight, man?
You know what? It's a great day. I can never complain. We wake up, we do well, we get after it. So I've been, anticipating this show with you. So I'm ready to dive in.
Absolutely. We got my guy Falcon here, says Dom won't pick any Michigan players. He hates all Wolverines, especially Blake Corum. So we already got some shots fired off by
Oh,
Falcon there.
sorry.
Man, it's well. First, let me go in on how much I respect you as a guy that does his homework. This past draft, I have a newborn, so I haven't dove completely into this draft like years past. So I'm a little bit behind on a lot of the people that I respect. But you, I mean, talk about the just amount of players that you go through and the detail that the good opinions, everything that you put on Twitter. I'm always following that, so I got to respect that. And I got to say, man, you're one of my favorites in the game, and especially for leaning Cowboys-esque kind of things. So got to give you your props there. But first thing we're going to talk about is the CD possibility of a holdout, how that affects the draft. Is it a possibility? What do you see there with that?
Yeah, this kind of goes along with the history of the Cowboys, especially the recent history and how they negotiate with their elite stars, the top of the top, the tier one types, where
Yeah.
it seems that Stephen Jones really loves to be able to use that fifth year option on those first round guys, even if we already know they're here, they're all pros, they're ready to go. Now, fans like us who try to be capologists, cap like couch cap guys,
Hmm.
we look at it and go, man, after that third year, you want to immediately get into a contract to extend that guy so you can have years on the back end to spread money. And you want to lock a guy in as early as possible because every year the market is just going to continue to go up and up and up as your other stars start to reset that
Yep.
market. But for whatever reason, Dallas doesn't care too much about the resetting of the market. They really like to go ahead and finish out the rookie deal as much as possible, or even, like I said, exercise that fifth year option. And then they have been the franchise that uses the franchise tag more than any other team in the whole entire NFL. So the buzz here the last week or so has been that Ceedee Lamb is going to hold out of the organized team stuff that's voluntary,
Hmm.
which that tends to happen with guys who are entering into that part of his contract where he feels like it's time to negotiate. It's time to get paid. So that's not a surprise. Um, I would be surprised if by July, so training camp as it's getting started, or maybe even a week or so into training camp, if CD doesn't get his deal done.
Hmm.
But he said it over and over that he's going to play. I don't think he's going to hold out to the point where you have like a Ezekiel Elliott situation or going all the way back to
Yep.
Emmett Smith, where he set out a couple of games, they went 0-2, and then they finally got the deal done. But I don't think it's going to impact the draft. I don't really think it's going to impact the overall way that they build out the team. Um, I think for some reason CD is the one that I don't think it's going to be too hard to get that deal done.
Yeah. No, and to the respects of just the whole 88 atmosphere and stuff like that, like
Yeah,
they don't want to like this guy's already a team legend, truthfully. Like
yeah,
his first 4 years have been that good. I think he's improved at least 10 yards per game
mm,
um over the past years. And this past year, he went plus 20 yards per game. Um, contrary to his years prior. So
right.
he's just a guy that's on the up and up, a true superstar, and he wears that 88. You don't want to let that guy walk out of the building without, some compensation if it comes to that. But at the end of the day, I think that they are going to get him a new contract, and probably, like you mentioned, before training camp. They just got to figure out the numbers.
Yeah,
I don't, it's one of those things I don't worry about him not being a Cowboy. It's just the frustration with what you mentioned earlier about they should have got this done so much earlier because now Justin Jefferson's going to get paid. Chase, where is he coming in? All these other wide receivers, and there's so many talented wide receivers in the NFL right now. You want to be the first one to get the deal done because the second, third, fourth, all of those guys are going to eclipse the contract that you just put in place. So
right,
it's a
right.
no-brainer for them to get it done as soon as possible for me. So it's interesting. I think that whenever I came to you on Twitter and was like, "Hey, you want to jump on the show? Would you be interested in doing like a top 10 prospects for number 24?" You have one wide receiver on there. We're gonna get to that. So if CD in the slight chance that he doesn't get the contract and he does actually hold out a couple games, maybe we see that wide receiver at 24 play in. Who knows? But we'll get to that a little later. I did want to bring up the 30 visit list for the Cowboys so far. I don't know how well you can read this on your side, but
Yeah, it looks great.
okay, yeah. So, do any of these names kind of stand out for you at 24? I know that Fuaga, he's a guy that a lot of people have, going top 10 possibly or in that 10
Right.
range. So, that's probably a trade up candidate. But, the other guys, are any of them standing out for you at 24 or 56 or wherever in this draft?
Yeah, to me, the number one target out of these guys that have been confirmed 30 visits would be Troy Fountainu, the offensive lineman from Washington, because I
Mm,
think he has a realistic shot of being there close to pick 24. But, I can't discount already that Dallas might think about using a late pick to be able to move up if they love a player that much. I'm not saying I would want that, but like if a Fawaga were to start to fall, or maybe if they like Fountain that much, maybe they think,
hmm
okay, we're going to move up to go get that guy because it fits that left tackle position that is so important on that whole offensive line. And it allows them to be able to keep Tyler Smith right there at guard so he can continue to be the all pro that we've seen him already turn into just 2 years into his career. So yeah,
hmm
Troy, that's the guy that I zero in on of all the offensive linemen that went to the Senior Bowl, which I was blessed enough to be able to go and be a part of that experience. Probably the
Absolutely,
best
man.
experience I've had. So if you're a couch scout, definitely go to the Senior Bowl. You can get those credentials. It's not that difficult. Hit me up if you want to know how. But he was the top rated offensive lineman that I had who had accepted an invite. Unfortunately, he pulled out. He didn't go to the Senior Bowl, but that was over guys like Jackson Powers Johnson. It was over Graham Barton, who also at that time had accepted his invite to the Senior Bowl. But I
hmm
just love what Troy has in his tool bag whenever it comes to being a solid left tackle option for the Cowboys.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that Senior Bowl is. I mean, a lot of people had slept on that in the past, but the
Man,
more and more, and especially with how they shifted it and allowed juniors to come now too, it's become such a great tool for scouting and getting the idea outside of schemes what these players can do. You know what I mean?
right.
And especially for a player like a Jackson Powers Johnson or a Graham Barton, that you want to kind of see them in specific roles. Like JPJ, he has all the size to play guard at the next level as
Exactly.
well. So do you want to kind of, as a coach, do you want to ask him, hey, or would you be interested in playing guard? Would you be interested in showing some snaps there during the Senior Bowl or during these practices and stuff like that. So it's an extremely useful tool. The Senior Bowl is, and yeah, I'm definitely interested in going next year because it looks like a lot of fun, and you just get to mix it up with like-minded people that just love the draft process and love scouting these players. So
Right.
really, really cool that you got to go there. So I might be hitting you up to try to figure that stuff out next year. Um, any of these other names you see on here that are really, eyeballs like wide open, like, oh, okay, this is a interesting name.
Yeah, I'll try not to exhaust it too much, but just still sticking to the 24 option. Or if Dallas were to make a small move, trade back, which is become probably the popular thing amongst Cowboys Nation, is to try
Hmm.
to pick up that extra third round or fourth round pick because currently they don't have a fourth round pick. But the guy from BYU, Kingsley Suamataia,
Mm.
6'5", 326 pounds, 2 years ago, he started at right tackle for BYU. I thought he did much better as a right tackle, but then they flipped him over to the left side, and he did a fairly good job. But to me, he needs a little bit more repetitions to be able to get himself fully ready for staying on that left side. But
Mm.
I think he has become amongst the guys that who do chop it up with me or maybe follow my thoughts or ask me about the offensive lineman. He's starting to become a little bit more popular than a Tyler Guyton, who early on the
Mm.
media scouts were picking him to Dallas. But some of us who
You
follow
know,
Dallas so closely, we look at Kingsley and we go, he fits more the profile, the style of player that they go for because of that versatility that he already has with that big body type, super athletic kid. I don't think he really tested as good as he had already been testing while they're at BYU the last couple of years, because
mhm.
that program continues to just pump out like extremely gifted athletes who fly under
Yep.
the radar and then they get into the league and they do well. So I think he has that potential as I think my offensive tackle 8 on the board, just above Tyler Guyton. I think
Mm.
he would fit well there at 24. The value makes sense to me. Or in a trade
Trade
back
back.
scenario, he could still be on the board.
That's interesting that you say that. I think like 2 episodes ago, I had, or no, it was on Across the Star podcast. They had asked me who I think is the most overrated player in this draft, and I said Tyler Guyton because you look at Mel Kiper, you look at Dane Brugler, you look at Daniel Jeremiah's boards. They have him cemented top 25, and Dane and Daniel Jeremiah have him top 20. So to me, I didn't see that on tape by him. And I know he's a guy that obviously he transferred from TCU to Oklahoma. First year in that system, he has to work with guys he had never worked previously with, so that plays a little bit of a factor in there. But I didn't see all that much from him that made me think, okay, yeah, this guy for 3 years in college, he's consistently grown and he's really worked out his kinks. I think that he still has a lot of rawness to his game. He has all the measurables, all the length
Right.
and
Right.
athleticism. I thought that even as a pulling tackle and stuff like that, I didn't think that he took great angles in his blocks. Um, it was just one of those things, man. I wasn't super impressed with Tyler Guyton, but I believe Kingsley transferred from Oregon to BYU. So, and at time in Oregon wasn't like anything crazy or anything. He just transferred
11
to
snap.
BYU to, yeah, exactly, to get onto the field. So, I wasn't familiar with that. Being an Oregon fan, I didn't really know that until I checked him out and saw that he was at Oregon at one point. But he's a player I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this guy's kind of flying under the radar. So I'm happy that you brought him up. So with that, let's jump into your draft sleeper slash pet cats. And it seems like Kingsley is one of those guys for you. Do you have any more? It can be at the offensive tackle position or any position, truthfully.
Yeah, I'll actually go to receiver because for me, Dallas needs to consider the wide receiver spot to me
Yep.
as early as that 24th pick if things fall just right. But I think really the best value spot for them, knowing what their other needs are, is going to be on day 2, maybe round 3, so that 87th pick.
Mm,
There's a couple of guys that I truly love, but one that I'll bring up because he doesn't get much love is Jermaine Burton, Alabama receiver.
mm.
I know they used him a little
Little
bit
bit of
more, yeah, as a
little
vertical
bit of
threat.
a character concern guy, though.
He got it. You definitely right about that. The character issues are definitely there because there were a couple of on the field after the game
Yep.
incidents
Yep.
that occurred. But to me, he brings the kind of uh, mindset, the toughness, the mental fortitude that team definitely needs. They need, some of y'all call it dogs. I call them glass eaters. I call them. I got
Yep.
this little thing where every team needs a good mixture of choir boys, guys who are going to do the thing just right, company type guys. But then you need some car thieves
Yeah.
because those are the type of guys that can really get everybody up. And he's always jarring. He's got a high competitive spirit about him. As long as you can tame some of that competitive spirit where it's not going overboard, where he did get a couple of personal foul penalties, but I think he has the tools to be able to be a great complementary receiver to a guy like Ceedee Lamb for the
Mhm.
next 4 years or so.
And he's a guy that can work over the middle too, which is one of those things that is
Fearless.
really important in the West Coast offense. So I think that he would be a good fit. I probably wouldn't like him as a second round pick, but third round absolutely
Third
would be
round.
on board. So one of my kind of guys that I'm interested to hear what you think about him is Malik Washington out of Virginia. Just an absolute little bulldog, just straight beast. He has contact balance, just breaks tackles. One of my favorite clips of the guy comes over the middle on a kind of a deep cross, hits the safety and just shoulder shrugs him off of him and just keeps on going for another 12 yards. He catches everything. I think he had like 100 receptions this past year. Just he's one of my pet cats, and I bring him up all the time. But is he a fit for this team with CD working so much out of the slot? That's my question to you. And how would you use him if the Cowboys did elect to bring in a smaller, craftier guy like a Malik Washington?
What's funny is every year I ask the question, how many pet cats are you allowed to have? Because
Yeah.
there was a group of five that before every college season, I'll put five guys out there for
Hmm.
those that follow me. Hey, be looking for these guys. They're not going to be first round players. I'm trying to spotlight those day two types or, second to fourth round types. Spotlight them early, follow them so you'll already know about some of these guys who aren't your blue chippers. And then I'll expand it to 10. And then those 10 just become my guys that I truly follow. I just want to see them do well no matter where they go in the league. Hopefully, they land on the Cowboys. Originally, I would have said Malachi Corley was that guy for me because of the
Mm.
body style, the yak ability. I just want to see him in that Cowboys offense. But to my boy, Professor O, his credit, he was like, you know what? We're chopping it up in the back channels. And he was like, hey, what everybody is saying about Malachi Corley, it's really Malik Washington.
Mm.
Far as he's a little bit more of an elite mover than Malachi Corley is. He has a little bit better of a contested catch rate than Malachi Corley does. He actually can run the route tree. He was able to do it. And it's not that Malachi can't, he just wasn't asked to do those types of things.
Yeah.
So already you have an experienced receiver out of a guy like Malik Washington, whom, like you said, is probably going to be more of an inside slot receiver type. But I think you can put him on the outside and maximize the speed that he has to do well for you. So you put him in that wide receiver room with the Cowboys, where because you lost Michael Gallup, because you only have 1 year left with Cooks on his deal, and then we're still messing around with CD, though you and I feel like they're going to extend him eventually. To bring a guy like Malik Washington in, who led the ACC in receiving yards, a
Mm.
touchdown machine, I'm sold on him. I'm glad you brought him up, but I couldn't steal him as my pet cat because my boy Matto had already
Matto
done
brought
that.
him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I love the players that you know that they're going to get the ball, but they still get the
Yeah.
ball. You know what I mean? And that was Malik Washington in that Virginia offense. I thought the same with Zay Flowers last year. Interesting that you bring up Malachi Corley because I was super, super high on Puka Nakua last year because of the things he could do as kind of a Debo Samuel esque player,
Mhm.
taking, snaps out of the backfield, working on the end around stuff. But Puka was so good along the sideline with the body control and stuff like that. And I,
Right.
I, I brought that up on a different show. Somebody asked me, hey, what's your top 10 wide receivers? And I actually had Puka up there because of the sideline control. And I was like, it's Michael Gallup esque, but he can also do these Debo Samuel type of things. Now, the Rams didn't use him in that respects as much, but he was so much better than we anticipated. How do you feel Malachi Corley translates to the NFL game, or is it really super just system dependent? And because like you talk about it, he's not really a nuanced route runner, and a lot of these guys coming out of college really aren't anyways. But when he does get the ball in his hands, he's so electric. He can break tackles. He can get you those yards. He is fast. Like he can run away from players. So where do you see him in the NFL, and do you kind of see him in a specific system to get the most out of him?
I mean, yeah, you put him in a system like the Rams, who do a lot of, pre-snap motion or using the 11 personnel quite a bit, or you put him in a system with San Francisco. Heck, even though he's not a speed demon, I think you put him with Miami and what they
Mm,
have, you can
mm,
unlock that, or a Kansas City. Let's say he's there at the end of the second round and Kansas City is still in need of a receiver to add to their collection of players. I think he can do what Rice did for them this past year, and you know what his
yep.
situation is right
Uncertainties.
now.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it is going to be scheme specific because you got to scheme him into games. And I think um, Malik Washington, on their hand, is a little bit more of a nuanced player. I think Burton could
Mm,
become a little bit more of a nuanced guy. And it's not that Malachi can't, but it's just what we see right now. So yeah, I don't really give him the comp of Debo, like size wise, of course. It's all there, the 5'11, 214 ish. Even with the 40-yard dash, both of them are in the 4.4s. Uh, Malachi's got some pretty long arms, 32 and an eighth. That's long for a guy that's
yeah.
his size, and nice hands, all of that. But to me, like his mentality, his play style, it kind of reminds me of Golden Tate some.
Mm,
And I kind of put Burton in that same with the head case.
yeah.
Where I'll never forget Golden Tate when he was at Notre Dame catching a touchdown against Michigan State. Then he jumps into the Michigan State band, who's right there preparing to come onto the field as halftime is fast
Hmm.
approaching. He just does little stuff like that to get under people's skin. And Malachi's kind of got a little bit of that, but he doesn't go overboard with it. He'll get in your face, but he really won't say anything. He just lets you know I'm here. And then
Mm.
when you see him running over guys, being having the second most tackles broken in his career over that span, I mean, just a tough guy. And I think
Yeah.
again, you add that competitiveness into the Cowboy system, and if you want a guy to do some of the zone stuff, or maybe put him in the backfield for a couple of snaps, like San Francisco does Debo, you can unlock a lot of that versatility that he would bring to the team.
My guy, and if I say your name wrong, I'm sorry. Uh,
Eliezer.
Eliezer. Okay, Mendoza. Jacob Cowing is mine. Trio of guys I really like in the later rounds: Tyrese Chambers, Dayton Wade, and Lee. Latr- I don't even know. I'm not even gonna try that name. Something Griffin. Um, do you know those guys? And if so, do you like any of those guys in the later rounds, or would you be interested with them if the Cowboys drafted them?
Actually, I think Calvin might go somewhere around the fifth round. He's probably the highest rated guy of that group, with Griffin probably around the sixth or seventh. The other two, Chambers and Wade, they may go undrafted, but kind
UDFS.
of be like
Okay.
that priority type who get a little bit more money because there is something there to work with. But Cowing is a very small guy. I think he's like 5'9", 175 pounds,
Mm,
but
okay.
he can do everything that you want out of a guy in that small frame. Like he knows how to run routes. He understands the nuance. He knows how to change speeds whenever he's into his route. He knows how to snap off. He knows how to do the head manipulation. He's a guy that's definitely flying under the radar. And at the Senior Bowl, I was scared for him because he came off the field. Everybody in the stadium thought he tore his ACL, but then all of a sudden he pops up at the combine and he goes out and he does well. So he's fine.
Mm,
But yeah, he's one of those guys where if you need a nice slot receiver and you're there on day three, heck, I could even see using a fourth round pick on him, especially if you're there in the back end where now we're talking about that those compensatory pick,
yeah. Yeah.
like
That range.
round. Yeah, go ahead and get him out of Arizona.
I wonder how much the having Cavante Turpin on this team hurts some of these slot guys from being, um, on the board for the Cowboys. Because I mean, especially with the new kickoff rule, I was kind of almost like Turpin. Does he make the team this next year? Like he hasn't had a kickoff return throughout. I mean, aside from preseason, um, in the NFL on an actual regular season games and stuff like that. So where does he fit in? And then now this new rule really brings Turpin back into the fold. He's almost cemented into that role. So kind of hurts the smaller guys. But now with Michael Gallup's departure, and I'll bring up this name, Javon Baker, um, you know, uh, I'm interested to hear how you kind of feel with him because he is a guy that can play the true X position on the outside and still allow CD to work in that slot role. Brandon Cooks as well, those two interchanging, and you got a guy that can really work on the outside and can be a red zone threat. I think that's one of the things that we've really missed. I think that he had the most touchdowns from a wide receiver in the Big 12 this past year. So we've missed that since Michael Gallup has kind of fell off a little bit, and then of course with the departure of Dez, eventually, I mean, he was just a red zone monster. So, do you see him as at the worst a red zone kind of back shoulder fade kind of guy, and at best a Michael Gallup plus some, especially in the middle of the field? I don't think he works along the sidelines as well as Michael Gallup used to, but he's an interesting prospect. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Javon Baker.
Yeah, coming out of Alabama originally and then
Hmm.
transferring over to Central Florida, you know that there's skill there. There's an athleticism there for him to be a receiver out of going into Alabama. Then he goes over to Central Florida, and early in the year, I wanted to see how he was going to do in the Big 12 against a bit better competition. And my goodness,
Yeah.
Oklahoma game, put on the tape. Yeah, I mean, that's all you really need to know. And so from that point, I really started to try to spotlight him because I thought maybe round three, maybe he'll be there in round three. I think there's a chance that he may sneak into the second round before it's all said and done.
Yeah.
The guy that he kind of reminds me of, it's not a size comp, and I'm not saying it's like it's an apples to apples comparison, but when I watch him move, he reminds me of Victor Cruz from the
Mm,
Giants
the
a
Giants.
number of
Yep.
years ago, and I think he's kind of got that ability where, like you said, he makes some of those acrobatic catches. He knows how to contort his body. I think he has enough speed. It's kind of deceptive where he's
Yep.
moving faster than what he actually looks. So yeah, I think he would be one of those perfect replacements for Michael Gallup if he's there at 87, because I think 56 is just a little bit too rich for me. But I
Yeah.
still like the player because I think if you put him into the league, he can be one of those, wide receiver two types. I don't think he ever be like a receiver one, but a very, very complimentary, like solid complimentary guy at the wide receiver two spot.
Yeah, yeah. I think that during this draft, we're going to see one of two things, and it's either a big run on wide receivers early on in this draft, or teams taking like, hey, this is a deep wide receiver class. We can pick up these positions I need first, and then come back around and pick up our wide receiver. So does that factor in with some of these guys getting pushed down further down the board? It's going to be interesting to see
It will.
because they're like tackle after those first like initial eight it falls off a decent amount. You don't feel as good about getting a potential starter. Um, Thinking about the centers, like it goes kind of deep, but after those first three, I throw Frazier into that three
Oh yeah.
mix. It falls off a little bit, but then you've got a nice little group coming back around in the third round. So interesting to see. Excuse me. My guy Falcon says, this is where Dom excels because he likes Roman Wilson. I'm interested to hear about Roman Wilson, how you kind of feel about him coming from that Michigan offense that was so run heavy. And, like, do you see him being one of those guys that could be kind of a Jackson Smith and Jigba kind of mold? at the pro level in that slot and just working the soft zones, or do you see him as more of a deep threat? Where do you see him at?
See, man, sorry, Falcon. Now, I wish they would have targeted him a bit more. I wish the quarterback really had the opportunity to be able to make that connection even
Mm,
more. But I understood what Michigan was trying to do with their overall offensive scheme, with what Harbaugh likes to do. But immediately I was spotlighting him also because I felt, man, here's another day two receiver in this stacked receiver class where, again, may not be a wide receiver one. He may not be even a wide receiver two in this league, but just a
mm,
dependable, like, slot guy. So for Cowboys' sake, I'm talking about top end Cole Beasley, a bigger Cole
mm.
Beasley. You're talking about a 5'10,
Randall,
5'11
do you
guy.
kind of see him as like a Randall Cobb esque?
I could see that.
Okay.
For sure, I could see that. That makes total sense. But he's got a little bit more vertical ability than a Cole Beasley. So you kind of
Yeah, yeah.
merge the two together, which is why I think you're bringing up Randall Cobb because Cobb had that ability earlier in his career. So yeah, you add a piece like Roman Wilson where he's got sure hands. He understands how to run routes. He knows how to get open. I love seeing him on crossers where Dallas needs to incorporate more and more of that into their offense. You add him, if he's there at 87, I think that's max value.
There you go. All right, one more sleeper slash pet cat. Who is your guy if you had to just add one in, and then I'll go with one of my guys.
Man, a sleeper pet cat. That's not really a sleeper. I think a guy that's kind of early on, people talked about him, but now they're not talking so much about him. I think we need to start bringing back Cedric Van Pran Granger out of Georgia,
Mm, there you
um,
go.
because you got the top three centers on the board. I think they are immediate starters. But the last guy that I think out of the whole center group that is going to be an immediate starter is Van Pran, and it's because of the experience.
Yep.
And
3 year starter.
everything you've heard out of Georgia is how much he's a great teammate. He also got some hands. Go research what happened with him and that kid Bear Bryant or Bear or whatever, who's now transferring from USC already. Go hear about that incident. So tough kid, great kid. He knows the game, and everyone always
IQ.
talks about his FBI, football IQ.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that from a guy who's playing center because not only is it the quarterback of the offensive line, but you gotta truly understand how to get everybody else involved. What's happening after the ball has already been snapped because defenses are always throwing something exotic at you, whether it's a twist, a stunt up front, just being able to have that cool, calm demeanor, the confidence to just allow things to sometimes come to you. I think he can get a few of the things that he needs to refine, correct it. I think he can do that because of how intelligent he is. Whenever he learns something, he locks it in and then he moves on. But yeah, I think it wouldn't shock me if Van Pran actually goes there, right there in that mid to late second round range, because I think he is the last experienced uh, center that's worth that type of a pick. A
Mm-hmm.
later guy would be Matt Lee, who plays for Miami, who actually has the most experience of all centers. And then the other thing about this whole center class, a lot of these guys are 1 year experienced guys,
Mm.
or you're projecting that they might move to that position from something else, like Graham Barton, who only has the 5 games
Yep.
his freshman year.
Freshman year.
But I think he would do well going back to center. But that's not
That
a great deal of experience. So a lot of
you,
people, knocking Amarius Mims for only having 8 games starting and
but then they're in
limited
love with
snaps. But then,
in love
yeah,
with Graham.
JPJ and
You
Graham
know,
and all these other guys.
That's one of the things I was going to kind of bring up while you were talking, and then you eventually got to my point. I was going to bring up about Graham Barton is just the Cowboys are losing Tyler Biotish, which let's be frank about Tyler Biotish. He didn't have the greatest anchor, got kind of set back in the lap of Dak sometimes, and that is what it is. Obviously, the NFC East has some powerhouse defensive tackles he has to go up against, so that's understood. But one thing that Tyler Biotish was known for is he's good with his IQ, can get the blocking assignments correct at the line and figure those things out. And that's especially this offseason, that was a big point of emphasis is that was really going to be specifically Tyler's job and not Dak Prescott's job. And so you lose that with Tyler Biotish. And then also he was, obviously not always, but he was kind of one of those enforcer guys and those hustle guys. Like he would be always down the field, right there to pick up whatever wide receiver just made a 20-yard play or whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah, you bring up the Georgia center. I see some of that in his game. Obviously, not as powerful as some of the other guys at the top of the list.
Right.
But talking, I kind of grouped him in that third round range.
Hmm.
I'm interested to, if we don't get center early to come back around and have him as a possibility. I'm
Right.
interested. Mason McCormick, Cooper
Hmm.
Beebe, are those two guys that you could see shifting into center? How would you feel about those two guys? And are those guys amongst your favorites in the guard class, or how do you feel about them, man?
Oh man, I have a 2 year love affair with Cooper Beebe. It's kind of like unhealthy.
Yep.
That's my overall pet cat of the whole
There
class.
you go.
Just because of, like I said, been following him for 3 years, but really spotlighting him for the last 2 years. I really want him to be a left guard. He needs to be a
Mm.
left guard,
Okay.
only because not saying that he doesn't have the flexibility in his hips, been able to get low, just the overall movement skills. And what I really want to see him do is just fight in the booth right there at left guard, not having to worry about snapping or again being the quarterback of the offense. Just let him get after it. So I think there are some athletic limitations, even though he tested extremely well, far better than I thought he was going to. I still
Yeah.
think there are some actual play on the field limitations with that flexibility and the lateral movement where I don't truly want him to be a center. But I think he could do it, especially in an inside power scheme. Teams would love him. But if you're talking about zone blocking, no, I don't think
Yeah.
that's where you're really going to get the value out of Cooper BB. However, man, a guy that I think people need to start to think about, and I'm sorry I just passed over our other guy, is Christian. Oh goodness,
Hayes.
Haynes. Yeah,
Haynes. Yep. Out of
I
UConn.
man,
Okay.
but I
Are
really
you talking about him shifting into center or
I want to move him to center.
okay?
It's going to take some time because he hasn't played that spot. But thinking about upside after the first three are gone, I think his upside is much higher than a SVP or even much higher than a Cooper BB if you move
Mm.
Cooper inside and even Mason McCormick. Um,
I
he
think
just,
I think you'd have to pick Christian in the second round. Are you
oh
kind
yeah,
of okay?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
That's a second rounder. I think Cooper is a second rounder as a guard. I think Mason McCormick has moved himself all the way up into the third round because
He's
he's
kind
got
of one of my sleepers, man.
that's
Honestly,
definitely
I feel like he can play any of those three interior spots.
he's so tough. I mean, just strong. It's like an ox. Like he's a tree
Yep.
trunk where he gets in the interior. He's not being displaced from the line of scrimmage. He's actually moving that line 2 to 3 yards every play against that competition that he's coming from. And then when he went out and proved it against the bigger boys in the all-star games after the season has been over, he's made
Mm.
himself some money. And then the fact that he trains with Duke or had trained
Yep.
with Duke for the last 10 weeks or so, that
And
helps
Duke,
maximize that value.
Duke's highlighted him a couple times too. So
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, he's got the a stamp of approval from him
yeah.
as well. So
That's
you
the
can't
whole
take
line
that
whisperer.
lightly.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear. Hey, we got Cole's Cowboy in here. Got to shout him out for saying what up. We can't see the emojis, unfortunately, but good to have you in here, man. I'm interested to hear what you think about this running back because he's kind of one of my pet cats. However, he's fallen off of the map for a lot of people. It's Notre Dame's Audric Estime, and I liked him a lot. I think that he's one of those guys. He kind of reminds me a little bit of DeMarco Murray, just keeping his hand up, ready to stiff arm people. Really powerful. I think that he can work inside out. You have absolutely zero question about whether or not he can be a goal line back. I think he can do that to the T. I think that he can get you consistently, that 5 to 10 yard range.
Right.
It's just he doesn't have the home run speed, the breakaway speed, which limits him. I have a fourth round grade on him, but I'm interested, especially with how he worked out at the combine and stuff like that. Does that make him a fifth, sixth round guy? Where do you have him, and how do you kind of see him if the Cowboys draft him for that role, pairing him with Rico Dowdle?
Yeah, he's my running back 7. And I think fourth round is the best value that you can have for him. And I like your comp. But you're talking about one of the youngest players in the entire draft.
Mm,
You're talking about a guy who plays a position where this current class, you look at all of the running backs, and every single one of them has either had a ACL tear in the
injury.
past
Yep. Yep.
or an MCL, meniscus, something. Well, he doesn't have that on his resume. Also, you look at his overall carries. His carries are well below where you would even love a player to be. So with that youth, the tread that's still on the tire, and no injuries, and then you watch his play style. He's not a glass eater for a guy that big where he's just running over guys, trucking
Yeah.
them, but he still is moving forward. He's got good contact balance where he can run through some of those tackles. It's not that he's running them over, but he's able to stay up as guys are hitting him. When you look at the last 5 drafts of every running back that's been picked, he is the 12th best in yards after contact.
Yeah.
And when you got 4.26 yards after contact, that's a tremendous like bode to what he can do and bring to this team, where you're talking about that 5 to 10 yard range where he's just churning out those first downs. So I think he's a great complementary back as your bigger guy who can get you some of those tough yards with one of your smaller guys. So if they were to, let's say, double dip, and they got our boy Audric Estime, let's say they found a way to get a fourth round pick and they got Estime. Well, then you can turn around and maybe the 6th, 7th round, get a guy like Blake Watson out of Memphis, who's
Okay.
a little bit more of a lightning type.
Kind of in that
Or,
Tony Pollard cut. There
yeah,
you go.
it's Zeke and Tony all over. Now, not as great as those two
Yeah.
guys are
Poor man's
value
version a
wise,
little bit.
but yeah, that's exactly what you get out of it.
Yeah, and I think that realistically, he's one of the better pass blocking backs. I mean, you compare him to like a Bucky Irving, it's like night and day. So,
And he had to
um,
develop that too. Like,
yeah,
being a Notre Dame fan, like you saw it over the last couple of years where he just got better and better and better at it. And it's almost like Tony Pollard as a Cowboys running back that first year, the rookie year, a lot to be left to be desired. And then all of a sudden he gets better at it. By the time where third year, he's one of the better blocking running backs in the league. But you got Zeke, who, is top tier when it comes to run blocking. So then you didn't have to use Tony like that when Zeke was still around. But whenever Zeke left and Tony was coming back from his injury, he still was a good blocking back. So yeah, you bring Estime in there, you need that
mm,
added value out of a running back. And I think really he could represent as a running back 1. But and really in today's league, you kind of want
you
a
want the running
staple
back
of
by
that.
committee.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's jump into your top 10 options for 24 for the Cowboys. These are first round guys. Not necessarily, they don't all have to be first round grades, but
Right.
just options at 24. And we're going
Correct.
to start with my guy, Troy Fontenot. Out of Washington, the tackle. These are my kind of notes on him watching him. I said tackle and guard flex at the next level, offers solid patience and IQ as a pass protector while exhibiting nice athleticism to translate as a pulling blocker, solid anchor, length, balance, and leverage to excel at the tackle position, exhibits good hand technique more often than not, using one and two hand stabs to ward off defenders, shows a more aggressive technique in pass protection than other tackles in this class, which I kind of like.
Mhm.
Um, Excellent ability to maintain the pocket, pushing speed rushers up and outside of the quarterback, and impressive combine numbers as well for this guy. What were your notes on him and overall thoughts for this guy? He's your number one guy on the list for 24 if he makes it there. What makes him so intriguing for that selection?
Right. So for an offensive lineman, you have to be able to deploy multiple techniques. You're not just going to be a one trick pony because these defensive linemen are learning more and more things that they know how to attack whenever an offensive lineman does this. They watch their film, they get in their little symposiums, and they teach all these types of things. And so I like how you put that he has a little bit of the one or two stab. I call that independent hands.
Mm,
Because there are some times where you do have to use both hands to be able to block a guy, or you might have to come from that outside hand, which would be his left, being a left tackle. You really don't want to do that too often, but he's got the ability to do that. So he's got the power and the strength in his hands, and he's got good hand grip. But he's got that overall power to be able to drop the anchor, and then just a fluid mover.
yeah.
Like you said, the combine you were able to see that in the drills where he could get to his spots, like right there. He's able to get into his bucket. He's
Yeah, and
holding up
I
well
one of my most impressive things about watching him is that he keeps his head on a swivel.
all the
He
time.
is not afraid to disengage from his guy if he feels like he hasn't blocked good enough and go and help his guard as well. I think that's one of the biggest things coming from a tackle is like, and obviously for the Cowboys, he'd be playing with alongside Tyler Smith, so
Right,
probably not as much of a worry, but just overall, sometimes if you have guard deficiencies, having a guy like that that's crafty enough to have the awareness and the athleticism to get over there and help is such a plus in the pass blocking department.
right. He reminds me of Rayshawn Slater.
Mm,
It's more of that cool, calm demeanor that they bring. They're never sped up. He just gets to his spot. He gets his guy. And like you said, he's always got his head on a swivel, or some people just call that he's looking for work. He's
mm,
never satisfied with what he's already done. And I've been preaching that for an offensive lineman in any spot, you have to have great vision. We talk about running backs having great vision to be able to see a hole, or if things don't develop where the play is supposed to go, you're able to see the cut back and have that patience to do it. But you need great vision for offensive linemen because of, again, the stunts, the loop, the delayed blitzes, because you might have a guy lined up over you, and all of a sudden that guy goes crashing down on his buddy right there at guard, and then all of a sudden somebody's looping around. So you
yep.
definitely have to have your head on the swivel, looking for work, and be patient enough, but also agile enough to get to your spot.
Yeah, and I thought that he did an excellent job in that
Right.
Texas game, just giving Penix the amount of time to hit those deep balls to Rome and Polk. Did McMillan play in that game? I'm not sure, but um, either way, man, that was just a one of those all time games for Penix, and it
Yeah.
starts with the protection up front, not only by Fontenot but that whole line just played.
Rosengarten, the
Yeah,
center,
exactly.
Brailsford. I think he transferred to Alabama. Yeah, he followed the head coach to Alabama. He's going to be one of the better centers next year in 2025. Yeah, that offensive line, they got after it, all the way
Absolutely.
up until the Wolverines got them. But yeah, they
Yes, sir.
solid
Um,
team.
it's interesting to hear that you kind of compared him to Rashawn Slater, though, is because he's a guy that had the shorter arms, and a lot of people anticipated that for Fontenot going into the combine. He
Right,
comes out with testing really well in the arm length, and
right.
so a lot of people had him kind of pigeonholed into, oh, he's
Mhm.
more of a guard. Now it shifts back. Oh, this guy can seriously play tackle. And
Right.
so that's where you see him coming up the boards. And he's a possible at number 10 overall to the Jets. You know, who knows?
Right.
Because the Jets are an interesting team right now because they got Tyron, they got Moses, so they kind of figured out their tackle role. But are you really under the impression that both of those guys are going to last the whole season? So maybe you do want to go with a guy that has some guard flex to play right now, but when the inevitable happens, he can go ahead and kick outside. So
Exactly.
interesting that you did compare him to Rashawn Slater though, because he was a draft favorite during that time for me as well, and I had him over Panay Sewell, and I'm an Oregon guy, so
Me too.
um, interesting. But we'll jump in here to the next guy that was on your list, which is Graham Barton. We talked a little bit about him early on in the show, but these were my notes on him. Could be the most versatile player in the draft with legitimate flex to all five offensive line positions. Strong hands, smooth climber, solid balance, good anchor, high IQ, and know how to deal with counters. Shows patience as a tackle, not worried about engaging first. Finished blocker in the run game, has a certain tenacity slash dog to his game, athletic specimen that will look to be an early starter and a plus starter quickly into his pro career. Ran a 4.84 40-yard dash at 6'5", 311 pounds. That's absolutely moving. And then he had the 4.4 short shuttle as well. So a player that is a draft darling at this point to a lot of teams. It seems like half of the teams, probably all the teams in the NFL, were at his pro day
Yep.
to see to witness what he can do as a player. Talk on him and your idea what he would be for the Cowboys specifically, and if if the Cowboys don't draft him, could he possibly be a tackle or a guard for a different team? I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, for me, his maximized value is going to be at center. And
Hmm.
it's this Florida State game where I've said I think Jared Verse got the better out of the matchup between the two, and it's the lack of his arm length which really
Mm,
gets him into trouble. Which is why he
yeah,
definitely needs to move inside. And then there's some times where his anchor, will like let him down as far as he doesn't get his feet completely under him, and you see him on the ground a little bit too
mm,
much. It kind of makes you a little bit uncomfortable whenever you see it. But if he can get some of that corrected, because I think it's overextending because of the lack of length. But when he's able to get in and underneath guys and use the leverage, use that power, but then also that tenacity that he brings, he's got a little bit of that nasty to him where he's a mauler if you move him on the inside, and he's one of the fastest movers in this entire offensive line class. I just continue to think about using a guy like that, putting him in the middle of the offense, allowing him to be able to pull whenever you need him to. That's an absolute cheat code for a center to be able to pull. But for him to be able to do the combo blocks where you're now double teaming whoever the interior defensive lineman is, and you're going to the next level to that linebacker, he's got the power to be able to hold up and do that. That's what we didn't have out of the center position the last 4 years with Biotish, where he just simply wasn't, that guy who could do that. But he's
yep.
got better athleticism. He's more powerful than what we've had. Move him inside the guard. And I think you're looking at a top 20 player. And if he's still there on the board at 24, that's one where you just got to circle it and have your tough talks in the war room based on whatever else is there. Because I can make an argument where a Graham Barton is the kind of guy that you would rather have at 24 than maybe a Tyler Guyton or even my guy Kingsley at
Mm.
24. But then you're starting to ask yourself questions of what do you really have at left tackle? We don't know what they feel about Awesome Richards. We don't know if they're going to move Tyler
Well,
Smith
they
over.
brought Chuma Edoga back. Come on now, get.
You know what? I actually like Chuma a little bit better when he played guard.
Yeah, so did
I
I.
didn't like him too much at the tackle spot. But then they got Bass and they got Hoffman. They got a lot of interior options as far as guard is concerned, but they don't have that center spot just solidified. So, as much as we talk about left tackle, I think we can talk about center. That's why Graham Barton should be a legitimate option in Cowboys Nation at 24.
Yeah. No, he's one of those guys that the more that he's going to play center, the better he's going to
Better
get,
it's
in my
gonna get.
opinion, just because he's such an athletic guy.
Yep.
You talk about what made Jason Kelsey so good, and yes, he had the power, but he was kind of undersized a little bit. Like a lot of
Yep.
people don't understand that, but what made him so special was just the ability to just get out there and get on those pulled runs, the athleticism, get out there, seal the edge so his runners can get around him and just don't not even have to worry about the linebacker or whoever he's blocking shedding that block just because he's so good in that aspect of the game. So he's one of those guys, like we kind of mentioned earlier on, like there might be a little bit of a learning curve just because he hadn't played center since his freshman season. But the more he gets in there, and especially like you understand who he is as a player, you're gonna put him in training camp, all that stuff. You're just like, okay, you're penciled in at center. All you're doing is taking snaps, understanding blocking, all these things from this position strictly. We're not gonna even try you at left tackle or anything like that. Um, he is that kind of a guy. You have to understand that when you take him at 24, but you're getting such great value because of
Right.
the potential there.
Right.
So I'd be ecstatic at that pick. Brings us to this third pick right here for us, and this is the only wide receiver you have on your top 10 list for potentials at 24, and it's Brian Thomas Jr. He's he's the odd man out of that elite category at the top three with Adunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Neighbors, his running mate. But these were my notes on him. I said impressive combination of size, strength, speed, acceleration for the next level, strong hands and lengthy frame, allowing him to have a wide catch radius. I know he wasn't great in contested catch situations,
Right.
but that's something that's going to come the further he gets onto his game and just adds that play strength. But he also has impressive play strength, anyways. Impressive release package. First step
Mhm.
quickness off the line allows him to get up to the speed quickly and eat up turf at an alarming rate for defenders. Check out his 1.5 10-yard split for his 40-yard dash. Can be an instant deep threat at the next level. So right now you can use him at that Z position, use him more as a deep threat. In time, you hopefully translates into a true X role at the next level, but solid and willing blocker as well on the outside, can track the ball downfield at a high rate. 4.33 40-yard dash at the combine for his size, and then 38.5-inch vertical at the combine. Um, he was just a dude that was very impressive physically. I think that he was the only other guy other than DK Metcalf at his size that ran a 4.3. So, you're getting a specimen, and obviously he's not really nuanced with his routes, but that's going to come in time the more that he gets in there and just understands at the pro level what needs to be done and how to read safeties and get on the right page with this
Before
quarterback.
before you start this play, I think this is the play where he's down here at the bottom of the screen.
Yep.
I think this is the one where if you watch him as he gets into his route, just watch how he's able to sit. For a guy
Okay.
that tall, that big, who's kind of got, the longer strides, he's able to break down for a big guy.
Gear down.
Yeah,
Mm,
and like he can decelerate and then snap and then come back. And I think this is the play where he does it
that's
because he does it a couple of times against Florida. And so for a big guy who can be that vertical threat, I think he can be your X type. He can be a guy who could develop into a wide receiver one in this league. That's why I boosted his value as wide receiver four in this class.
yeah.
Um, and really, to me, he just needs more opportunities and he got it this past year, being opposite of Malik Neighbors, who steals the show, and he should. But I think this is almost like the Jamar Chase situation where he overshadowed the other receiver there in Justin Jefferson, and then Justin Jefferson goes on into the league and he does fantastic, and both of them are
Mm,
doing well. So I think Brian Thomas has some abilities where you put him in that Cowboys offense and you have him on the outside and you put CD right there with him on the
yeah.
inside and then you put Cooks on the other. Oh my goodness.
You know, you
Like
make
just
a really
guilty
good
pleasure.
point about the ability to gear down though, because
Yeah.
at the next level, here's the deal: is that corners, they might trust your speed, but if they don't trust that you can gear down and come back to the ball, they're just going to sit 10 yards off and understand, hey, I can break on this ball. It's not a big deal because this guy isn't sudden at his point
Right.
of break. And so that's one reason why I'm not a big Tez Walker fan, is because I don't think he gears down all that well.
Right.
And with Brian Thomas, he does. Like, that's one of the biggest things. Like, he has those suddenness at the top of the route, and understanding of, oh, I can really sell this, or I can really go all out and then stop on the dime, come back and get the gain, but still have enough athleticism to get yards after the catch as well. Like I said, he's not a super nuanced route runner,
Right.
but that's going to come with the more that he plays. And so, very interesting prospect, and I would love him at 24. I ultimately think he's going to go before 24, just because
Me
somebody's going
too.
to bet on that upside, and he's such an athletic profile. But man, he's electric.
Yeah, he's the one receiver I think that has a shot to be there, that I would take him over Graham Barton, over
Mm,
JPJ, over Kingsley, Tyler Guytons of the world, Jordan Morgan. I and I'll just figure it out. Like,
yeah,
I might be trying to use some next year's picks or something to move up in the second to be able to get my tackle. Maybe you got Patrick Paul there or something. I still think he's more developmental. I actually
developmental.
like
Yep.
Blake Fisher a little bit more than a lot of people because
Yes,
I
there
think
you
he has the
go.
ability to go from right tackle to left tackle. He's got that athleticism in him. I would have
I'm
had
a
him.
fan of Fisher.
Yeah, yeah. I would have had him much higher than Austin Richards, who I was high on last year as my offensive tackle 10 in that class. And to
Mm,
think he was a fourth round value for me. This is just crazy how this class is, where my offensive tackle 10 is a high second round value.
yeah,
But yeah, so yeah, no, Brian Thomas Jr., you put him in that Cowboys offense. And
yeah. No,
okay,
I'm right there with you. And we talk about replacements for Michael Gallup. He's replacement and some, and some. So,
he's replacing
I
Cooks
mean,
too.
I think, oh yeah, he's wide receiver too,
Yeah,
absolutely.
snap
Um,
shows.
Jumping into here with the fourth guy, he's a guy that I really like a lot. Honestly, he's one of my, I won't say pet cats, because he is kind of up there. A lot of people know about him,
Hmm.
but some people are down on him, think he's more of a guard. These were my notes on him. 3-year starter at Arizona, explodes out of his set, gets nice depth on his kick step while exhibiting balance and proper leverage, shows nice patience and overall understanding of the position, nice power stab to negate rushers off the edge, exhibits strong hands capable of grabbing and engaging through blocks, good adjustment ability and counter movements to negate nuanced rushers, has good timing with his hands, rarely gets beat straight at the point of attack, especially when he's on his keys, possesses good knowledge and awareness to deal with stunts along the line, has enough athletic ability to get, to be good enough as a pulling run blocker
Hmm.
on his assignments. Obviously, he's not as athletic as some of the other guys we've talked about earlier.
Right,
But I don't think that you can coach experience, and this is a guy that's seen a lot of ball, and he's
right.
a true left tackle. The only hiccup with me for him is he has the short arms. And for the Cowboys, that's a big deal. I know that. And so, do they see him more as a guard? It'll be interesting to see, but they were at his, testing him out along with the Ravens and another team. I can't remember who it was, but so there is some interest there. I think he's more of the trade back target for me. But if those tackles start flying off the board, you might have to pick him at 24, and I would be okay with it. I truthfully would, because of the experience. He's not a guy that you have that's raw like a Guyton. He's just a guy that I think is going to be steady. I don't think that he's ever going to be all pro level, but at this point, he's going to be a good foundational piece on that left side. Probably
Yeah.
will never be a top 5 tackle, but really good. You know,
Right, right. And I mean, everything you said, I agree with. I do think he is a tackle. I think his best value is actually going to be tackle.
I agree.
Some of the things that I may not trust him with overall is just brute strength. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's got the functional strength that you need to be able to play an offensive line position, but I don't think he's just a massively powerful guy. He's able to get himself in the right position to be able to use leverage. I think he's got good grip strength in his hands,
Yeah.
but he's not a guy that's bullying guys off of the line, even whenever it's time to run block. He's more of a, I'm going to use the momentum and your, movement against you and wash you on down. I
Hmm.
think if you were to move him inside, he'd be best used in a zone blocking scheme to be able to use the athleticism that he has, get him on a move again, so he can get that momentum going. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love him as a player. I think he should be a good left tackle option there for Dallas, especially a trade back situation. Whenever talking to him, I asked him like, "Hey, who's the best guy that you had to go up against? Like, if you
Hmm.
had an opportunity where you're chomping at the bit to go against somebody that you played with on the next level, who would that be?" Because I thought he did great in this game, and then another against UCLA
Hmm.
against Latu, to me, who has the best hands in this whole
I
draft as
agree.
far as an edge player. He's got a plan whenever he attacks. I didn't think he would say him, but there was the potential, and he was like, you know what? That's a great question. The one that I would say is the kid out of Washington. And so when you look
Braylon
at that,
Trice.
Braylon Trice,
Okay.
yeah. And so whenever you go back and I told him, I was like, I laughed. It's like that's the one I thought you would say because I saw where he gave you some fits with the speed to power rush.
Hmm.
And what have you been doing to work on that? And he was like, yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to. He really didn't trust himself so much coming back from that ACL injury. Like right now, I think he's
Yeah.
15 months removed from it now. So you're
Hmm.
talking about when he started the season this past year in 2023, like he was fresh off of an ACL injury, but he was able to come back from it and did extremely well. So moving him another year away from that, I think you might see him perform even better than he did last year with Arizona.
Yeah, I was way more impressed with him in pass pro than in the run blocking aspects of things. But and that's a little bit worrisome because the Cowboys were horrendous at run blocking last year. Um, but you understand what you're taking in the player here, and I think that at the worst he's going to be a starter and a guy that you can rely on. Now he's probably not going to be ever the Tyron Smith. You just understand that. But yeah, like you said, a lot of people are saying, can I, kick him into guard? I would keep him at tackle. I don't have a worry about the length problems.
Yeah,
Um, I think that he was just a knowledgeable player. Like he understood his deficiencies and understood how to work around those.
right.
And so I do like I almost called him Alex Morgan, the soccer player, Jordan Morgan.
Right.
So got to shout my guy Spoonie in here,
Spooney?
um, and believe
You
he's part of Pick Six
Oh
as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yes. He be preaching to us, man.
There you
Uh,
go.
the thing about Dallas's problems last year, really the last 2 years, it's not so much the players on the offensive line. To me, it was all about scheme. And they continue to just turn over offensive line coaches where things
Mm,
just aren't going well and they bring in a totally different scheme. I could think all the way back to Paul Alexander when he came from that Bengals system. And then we had Colombo before that, and we had
mm-hmm.
Callahan, who was the best. Was
Callahan
probably the
was,
most
yeah.
one of the most respected in all of the league. Him and Stoutland from the Eagles. Like
Mm-hmm.
those guys know how to coach the position. They know how to do different schemes, but they just have a way to relate to the players to get them to understand. But then they really maximize what's best out of the complete unit and go with that scheme. And so last year, with the change of them trying to do the inside zone blocking, I think it hurt that team because they didn't have the overall power to be able to do that, especially right there at the center spot. They went away from the outside zone blocking scheme, which bode well for them, especially when you think about Tony Pollard. When you
Yeah.
think in your mind about all of Tony Pollard's greatest runs, what did you see? It was almost like
Outside.
a stretch type
Yep.
play where
Yep.
he's able to be patient and then
Cut
it,
back. Boom. Explode. Yeah.
and they went away from that.
Yeah. It was unfortunate to see Tony Pollard have to play behind that line coming on, off of the injury and then also in his final year of his contract.
Right.
Obviously, he's probably not disappointed. He gets to play in his hometown, there in
Mhm.
Tennessee, which is a cool thing. So I wish him the best, but
Oh, yeah.
man, if we would have got Tony Pollard in the right runs and really worked that outside scheme and just allowed him to flow with the offensive line, make the cut, and boom, explode out of it, I think it would have boded well.
Right.
Off to our next guy right here, Jackson Powers Johnson, a guy I've watched a lot of football. Not with, but football of being an Oregon fan, just consistently violent when he engages defenders at the point of attack. Exceptional awareness under center, rarely gets caught blocking air, meaning he's always just looking for the work, like you mentioned earlier. Explosiveness out of the snap is there, allows him to quickly engage with his assignments. Good athleticism and power in the run blocking game, allowing running backs to simply, follow through the A gap and get consistent gains. Willing to throw his body around in combos to wear down defensive linemen throughout the game. Anchor and balance are there to truly hold up in the middle of the line, allowing QBs to step into their throws. 6'3", 328 pounds. He has probably guard flex. And he tested exceptionally well at the combine as well for his size. What were your notes on him? And at 24, obviously you mentioned him in there at 24, but what would it mean for the Cowboys to get just a true center at 24 that is a mauler? Like, I think that he's going to really help this run game. Just the ability to just like the goal line stuff. Follow this dude, and I think that you get consistent gains over and over and over. Talk about that.
Man, he's the Richie Incognito.
There
Far
you
as
go.
like far as that brawler, like the mentality that he brings is probably as the most tenacious offensive lineman in this whole entire class. And everything that the Cowboys fans have wanted out of a center
Hmm.
since Frederick, this kid has got it. And I think he's got more of a tough, like, brawler mentality more so than even Frederick.
Yeah,
Not saying that he's a better player, but just that nasty in him to be able to finish blocks, be seeking to just bury guys in the
and that
ground
right
and just
there
see
is
him
what I
do it
love
over
about
and
him.
over. Yeah,
He's always willing to just give somebody a little and then get to the second level and finish that block on a different player.
right.
Um,
And
uh,
he got some things to clean up. Like
yeah,
he's a little bit
definitely.
high in his stance. Like it's kind of a awkward snap to me, where that snap is going to be a little bit low because his butt
Hmm.
stays up a little bit too high. You want to see more knee bend there, but it's not that he's not a flexible player that he can't do it. And again, he's got the 1 year of experience this past season playing center after moving from guard the year
Hmm.
before that, and then even earlier on, he played a little bit of defense for him. But just
Yeah,
a
you can
nasty,
you he
nasty
can play
kid
defensive tackle.
for real.
He can help you with your defensive tackle
Goal
problems.
line situations.
Nah, but he's a guy. He's one of my favorite players in the draft, and I just think
Yeah,
that we've missed, like you brought up, Frederick. We've missed a true like nasty center. Since he got that Guillain-Barré syndrome. So,
yeah.
um, you
If
know, s-
JPJ doesn't turn out, that'd be one of the biggest shocks for me.
yeah,
Like, because I think people talk about ceiling guys and floor guys. I think he's got a high floor. Like he's one of the guys I'm most confident in to be able to put him in, and he's going to do a great job in the league. Now, how great will he ever be an All Pro? I think he's got that ability.
yeah.
But yeah, definitely a solid starter for you. Lock him in. You get ready to roll because that's an immediate starter for you right there.
Absolutely. Gotta shout out my guy Marvel and Group. First time checking in, Savage. Hey man, I appreciate that. Seems like my guy Dom knows you, so I appreciate you stopping in here and checking out my channel. If you could leave a like and subscribe, set that notification. I do a new show every single Tuesday, so it means a lot to help me grow. So I appreciate you
Oh
stopping in
yeah.
here. The next guy on the list, man, this is one of my favorite players in the draft by far. Let me get this off of the screen. Jerzon Newton, Johnny Newton, whatever you want to call him, this dude lives in the backfield. So these were my notes on him. Has the ability to be used all over the formation, exploiting weak links. Exhibits active, strong hands that are technically sound and effective. Consistently fights through doubles. And holds, shows a true nose for the football, possesses a wicked swipe and pull move to swim past blockers and get into the backfield, excels or excellent wrap up tackler in the backfield as well, highly effective in pass rush and run defense, gets deep, consistent push from the interior, disallowing QBs to step into the pocket, high motor player that plays through the whistle, solid pad level, and when used as a D end, he actually has kind of impressive bend for his size. Um, he's a guy that you talked about it a little bit earlier. Like you might have to pull this guy back a little bit because sometimes he can get a little crazy with how hard he's willing to hit a quarterback.
Right.
But I'd rather reel it back than try to get it out of him. But man, you talk about a guy that has put together two consistently really good years. Jerzon Newton is that dude. And I know that, some people might have their reluctancy, like, oh, he's kind of small school Illinois. No, Illinois has been pumping out some pretty solid players in the draft.
For
Um,
years.
so you know, uh, I'm excited about this kid. I think that even like you can use him as a one tech, um, uh, D end I mentioned, maybe like a 4-eye, so on that
Mhm.
inside shoulder of the left tackle or right tackle, whatever. But he's a dog. You talk about dogs, he's one of them.
So remember Kalijah Cansey last year
Yep,
in
yep.
2023 draft? And everybody was talking about it's too small because I think he was like 280 pounds, maybe 6'1", 6'2". But when I watch Cansey, I just see a guy who's quick off the snap. He
Mm,
gets into the offensive lineman very fast. He's able to put his hands in first, and then he wins the leverage game, and he's able to steer guys by then being able to determine where he wants to go. I see a bigger Kalijah Cansey out of Jerzon Newton,
yeah.
where you shouldn't be too concerned about the size of this guy being 304 pounds or whatever it was that he measured in at. I've continued to say this over and over and over, and I hope people pick this up. When it comes to the interior defensive tackle position for the Dallas Cowboys, stop worrying about size. I know we all want the big behemoth guys. We've
Mm,
been able to have they've had that. They've tried to bring that in, and
yep,
it just
that's
hasn't
true.
worked out. But when you start talking about maximizing the value on the interior for the Cowboys, you need a guy who's going to be a high snap getter. Forget the size. You need a quality high snap getter. Think about the snap shares because Osa Odigizua is your best defensive tackle right now. And we know
By
what
far.
happens to him. He starts wearing down
Mm.
throughout the season. And he's not wearing down, I don't think, because they're playing him too much,
It's
because
because he
his
goes 100% every
right,
single down. Yeah.
right. So like he's getting 58% of the snaps there on the inside. That's perfect, really. He
Hmm.
just needs somebody to pair with him who can also be a 50 plus percent snap getter where it's quality because he
Yeah.
hasn't had that with him. Jonathan Hankins 2 years ago was pretty good, but he really didn't get a lot of snaps because he's a big guy and he's later into his career. So
Hmm.
instead, they've been relying on guys like Neville Gallimore to get the second most snaps. They relied on a Justin Hamilton 3 years ago to get the second most snaps on the interior, along with Osa. And you just don't need those types of players. Those are deep depth guys that they're giving quality snaps to. A Jerzon Newton would come in and immediately be a good duo right there on the interior. And then whenever you need to put in a different package, bring in a Mozzie, bring in a Carl Davis if he stays on the
Hmm.
team, or go find another bigger body. But you don't want those guys getting no more than 25, 30% of the snaps over an entire season. But you definitely want a Jerzon Newton or an Osa or Byron Murphy even to
He's our
be able
next
to,
guy on the
yeah,
list.
to be able to sneak up there and get most of the snaps.
Yeah. Let's talk about Byron Murphy. Um, He's another guy, just versatility. Like I said, can play the zero, and it's strange because you'd think that Tavondre Sweat would be more of that zero for that team, but this dude, just his power is so enticing at the zero, at the 1, 3, 4 whatever you want to use him in whatever role. I think that he's there. True difference maker, not only as a pass rushing threat, but also as a good run defender
Yep.
from the middle as well. Exhibits a rare explosiveness off the snap to capture the middle and flush out quarterbacks. Handles double teams with strength and competitiveness, allowing surrounding teammates to eat. Quick hands to utilize effective push pull techniques. Shows patience, and to set up offensive linemen with kind of shake and swim moves. Offers a relentless motor and nose to the ball carrier. Shows excellent gap discipline and understanding of his assignment. Plays with good pad level. Gets consistent physical push from the interior. I think that if you ask me, like, and I know PFF has Byron Murphy as the better pass rusher, I think Jerzon Newton is a better pass rush for
I
me.
agree.
I think that
I don't
Byron
think
Murphy is better as a run defender, though.
me too.
And you talk about just the ability to hold that middle ground and take on those double teams and still be competitive through the double teams. Like, it's not like he's just eating them up, but he's actually getting push on the double teams, getting his hand out to try to bring down ball carriers. Like, he's just a competitive dude. And he has a relentless motor as well. Both of these guys would be I would be ecstatic if we got both of them, or well, I guess
And
either one at 24. Man, both of them
EJ,
are so good. And obviously Byron only has really the 1 year popping off.
right.
Um, but man, he wins at a high rate in run and in pass. It doesn't matter. This guy is a dog, and I would feel great with him at 24. He's one of those guys that are kind of cut in the same cloth of, dare I say it, an Aaron Donald? No, but you can see that flash from him. You know what I mean? And he's just a guy that's going to continue to get better, in my opinion.
For a dude that's not having not being able to do as much homework as you wanted to this draft cycle, you're hitting it all because it's again, it's not the comparison to Aaron Donald saying apples to apples. That's what he's going to
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
But you see Aaron Donald type things when Aaron Donald was at Pitt, where even though he's a undersized guy at that time,
Hmm.
Aaron Donald was like 285. When you see him get double teamed, he's able to go all the way down to a knee, still be able to hold up two
Push them
offensive
both.
linemen, and then squirt through somehow by getting skinny, and then he's making the play. You see it time and time and time again. To me, the most hidden quality out of a defensive tackle is the ability to take that blindside hit, where depending on
Yeah.
what the blocking scheme is going to be, you might have somebody that's trying to reach block you and you're not expecting that. Or you find a guy who's coming and trapping. Or it is that combo block where bam, you getting that pressure on that shoulder pad and you
Hmm.
weren't expecting that because you're
Knocking
lined up
off your
over some.
balance.
And so that contact balance we talk about, that's
Yep.
where Mozzie has struggled as a pro. And I thought he actually struggled with that whenever he was there in Michigan.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as a problem at all for Byron Murphy. In fact, I think he has the best contact balance of any interior defensive tackle option
Mm.
in this entire class. So, just like you said, the run defense to me is what boosts his value, even though he's a smaller guy. But
Hmm.
then that athletic ability that he has, where I think this is also still an upside guy because he is a player that you can uh like tap into some of that potential as a pass rusher. And you got to go back to when he was a kid playing football. He was a skill guy.
Mm. I didn't
And
know that.
in high school, yeah, he was more of a skill guy, but then they flipped him because of just his size. He just grew bigger. And
Mm.
really, he had more of a running backs mentality and he wanted to play that position. But
Oh man.
your career wasn't going to be a running back. And so he's a well-known Texas high school football player coming out of Denton Ryan, I believe it was. And he's just gotten better and better, which is why he made that big leap this year. So he's more of a high upside guy, but I think still his floor is pretty high up there, which is
Hmm.
why I understand why some people project him to be the higher rated player at
Yeah.
defensive tackle over Newton, though me and you are right there on board with each other, where Newton right now is the much better pass rusher from that interior spot.
Yeah. No, I think Newton just understands how to win in more ways right now.
Right.
And Byron, I think that he's just so powerful
Athletic,
and exactly and
ability.
athletic.
Hmm.
He's just able to win at that college level so easily. Not that he's not going to at the NFL level. It's not what I'm saying. I
Right.
just think it's going to be a little bit more of a transition period for him versus Jerzon Newton. I just think that he's going
Correct.
to come in and be a dog. You said he just kept on growing bigger. That put me some flashbacks to like the Sandlot with the Beast. He just kept on growing bigger when he was a little puppy. No, but it's funny because he's one of those guys, man. I just see so much potential in him, and
Yeah.
the more conservative play strength he's gonna get, the easier it's gonna get because he already has such great contact balance, such great play strength already. You factor in how much better and how much stronger he can get in an NFL weight room, like
Mm,
that's crazy to me. So,
yeah. He's
um,
great
really exciting to see what he can do at the NFL level,
for sure.
regardless if he's the Cowboy or not.
Right.
The next guy is,
Amarius.
he's one of those guys that a lot of people are indifferent about. They don't know if he's worthy of the first round pick because of the limited snaps and limited playtime. But this was my scouting report on him. Prototypical size for an offensive tackle in the league with his 36-inch arms, massive frame. He looks to seamlessly transition from college to pros. With the lack of true starts and game experience, Mim shows an impressive ability to stay patient and pass pro, allowing him to keep his head on a swivel, help teammates when necessary. Incredibly strong, lengthy prospect with athleticism to get out to the second level on pulls. Has a nice balance to his game for such a big guy. Doesn't get too over his skis and whatnot. If he gets his hands on you, I think it's over just because of his pure length. 36-inch arms is just crazy. Has versatility. He said in interviews that he practiced kind of 60-40 between right tackle and left tackle, so he has that versatility according to him. So, you know, I think that this is a guy that is very much in play for the Cowboys at 24. It's just how much do you get on the table as a scout to say like, hey, we're 100% confident in this guy because he does have the limited amount of games where he started. Um,
Right.
I like him. It's one of those things, man. It's hard to fall in love with a guy that you can only see so much on,
Right.
But as far as size and length and all the stuff that you want in a tackle, he definitely has that. So if you can just get him coached up and it's not like he's not polished. Like he's pretty good in all the things you want for an offensive tackle. It's just, you know, how much do we trust it when we've seen limited amounts of it?
I'm gonna have to steal from a different sport to try to explain what I think about Amarius Mims. And you know, even though I'm a big guy and I played football, football was my best sport. Uh, Unfortunately, I had the football body, but really, I was a basketball player at
There you go.
heart, and I love basketball. But I was able to be taught by uh, a woman who's actually in the Women's Hall of Fame. She's
Mm,
from my little podunk town, Moody, Texas. Coach Fran Garman. So go do your research on Fran Garman.
okay.
But like she literally taught me the game from when I was a little kid, and she taught me proper shooting form. And I remember she said something to me where I'm in the backyard playing against my neighborhood guys all the time, and she said, "You know what? You know the game of basketball well already as a young man, and you haven't developed bad habits that I can't coach it out of you." And
Mm-hmm.
so there was still that inexperience in me at that time where a little bit of coaching from somebody, I could soak it up and then utilize it. I think his lack of experience could actually into
a benefit.
play into his favor
Okay.
because he hasn't developed a lot of bad habits. His problem is he hadn't been able to stay healthy. He had
Yeah.
the ankle
The
injury
ankles. Yep.
that's really hurt him. And so I think if he would have been completely healthy this past season, we would have been saying Amarius Mims is probably the top offensive tackle in this entire class. But because of the unknown with him, it's hard to just go ahead and throw him up there. Like you said, he got the profile down. And in fact, he's a little freaky when it comes to profile with those 36-inch arms. That's
Hmm.
insanely long. That's, Tyron Smith type stuff there. But yet he's a much bigger, more massive guy
Huge
than a
frame.
Tyrant. And what I try to do is find a guy when he's playing against the best talent, guys that we know are either going to be top in their class or they're already in the league doing well.
Hmm.
And when I saw him play against some of the best edge rushers, then it excited me because I'm like, that guy's got power.
Hmm.
That guy has anchor. He can move good enough. And because of his movement skills, I think he's one of two players that you could take from the right side as a right tackle and flip them over to the left. The other guy being Blake Fisher. But number two, I think Amarius Mims has that ability. So that boosts his value to me. But is he going to be hurt guy? Because sometimes guys can be so big
Hmm.
and have such an impressive frame, and yet they're always having some kind of strain or lower body thing going on.
Yeah.
But
You don't.
overall, talent wise,
Yeah.
mm,
You don't think that Fuaga can flip?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
I so it's not so whenever you're starting to think about flipping guys from that right to left, it's rare where it works. A host
Yeah.
of guys, you can look at the history, see them go left to right. There's some guys that are just that's their dominant side, and to try to make them play that completely opposite side, it's tough for them. So I think, like I said, that inexperience for Mims, he hadn't learned anything yet. So put him out there left, let him get those movement skills down. I think he'd do great. I think Fawaga is a right side guy. And, if you're a team that already got both tackle spots fixed and you really
Throw him
need
in
an
there at guard.
interior, man, you can even put him at
Yeah.
guard because of that mentality that he has. But no, I just, even though he's super athletic, I just can't see Fawaga being a left tackle.
Really, I think he can flip. Just because I think that not enough people give him credit for his pass protection either. I think like yes, he's great at run blocking, but pass pro he is impressive too. Especially, and I think did he go to the Senior Bowl as well?
He was there. Yeah, he was there.
Just for the practices portion. Yeah,
You
right.
know what's going to get him in trouble? Uh, here's Fawaga's problem. He's going to get quarterbacks killed in the league. Whoever his quarterback is, he's going to get them killed if he doesn't fix his pass protection. And it's not that he's lazy out of his stance. He's a
Hmm.
quick guy. He can get any spot he wants. It's the hands.
Mm,
He loves to strike with that right hand over and over and over. And it's
yeah,
like, man, you stay on that right side and you're striking with that outside hand.
a
These
nuanced
guys are
rusher is gonna
just they're
eat
gonna
that.
eat him alive. And he doesn't have the greatest retracing ability. After
Okay.
he's already gotten into his spot and then you actually get hands on him, he doesn't retrace as well. So it's like, all right, fix those things, which they're it's definitely fixable. That's just coaching, really. So yeah, but he better get it fixed because he's going to get eaten alive on those outside pass rush moves, and really not by the powerful guys. It's going to be guys who got the nuance, who has a plan rushing
Hmm.
off that edge, and then he's going to overcorrect, which I've seen him do, and then he gets beat inside.
Well, talking about edge rushers, we got two to round out the list. Chop Robinson is on your list. Now, I'll be frank about it. If we drafted Chop at 24, I would not love it.
And
for
I
a
get
couple
it.
different reasons, and I'll go over those in just a second. But this was my positives on him. Hyper athletic might still be an understatement when speaking of Robinson. He possesses a rare first step, raw functional play strength, and impressive bend around the edge. High effort slash motor defender, always looking to get in on plays. Impressive in underneath coverage on flats and screens. I thought he was decent in that respects. Very good rip and dip move on the edge. 4-4 40-yard dash, 1-5-4 10-yard split, 10-8 broad jump, tested out of, in the 98th percentile at the position. So, combine freak, needs to improve as a run defender, often gets caught kind of QB hunting and overextending, was my biggest things on him. I just thought that he, for all of the problems with the Cowboys pass rush, like when you're up 40, you can go headhunt, when you're not, that's where you get in trouble. And I think that Chop Robinson is one of those players that kind of do that. They kind of headhunt a little bit more on the
Right.
quarterback and aren't always gap disciplined and on their keys. So he can get pushed outside and wide. And I don't necessarily love that. And especially with the player that Demarcus Lawrence is right now, he's really your
Right.
only guy that stays disciplined from the edge, anyways. So I would like to fill, and I think he has 1 year on his contract left.
Sure.
But I would like to, if we were to draft an edge player, I'd like to see somebody that can kind of fill a Demarcus Lawrence role, and that's why I'm kind of more excited about the next guy. But talk about Chop a little bit, and what you liked about him.
Chop has no clue what he's doing.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
out there on pure athletic ability. And you see that right there. The pull and then just rip. And then
he's
I'm
got
just going to
impressive bend though. I will
fly
admit
by
that.
you. Yeah, he's got all of the bend. He's got the quickest first step of anybody in this class, or the only one that would rival him, I would say, is Latu, as far as just that quick step. But
Okay.
he doesn't really know. He doesn't have a secondary move yet. He's got to develop, a number of pass rushing moves to be able to win consistently in the league. Now, because of that, not having a plan, I could see why somebody would look at that pick and go, that's not where the Cowboys need to use their top pick on a guy that's not polished enough.
Hmm.
But I think he's got that upside to where, man, he could be one of those edge rushers for you where it's more than just a specialist. But then also, what if he learns a little bit of the linebacker position where you can stand him up and add
Yeah.
some value there? Now, he kind of reminds me of a player that many Cowboys fans hated to see them, you know, just, we're not going to take you. We're going to take Mozzie Smith at that spot last year.
Nolan
The
Smith.
kid out of Georgia, Nolan Smith. It's like, why aren't people making that comparison? Because to me, Nolan didn't have it all together. He was more of a speed to power
I
type
think
guy.
Nolan was better at run defense, though. I'll
He
say that.
he is. He's a stout guy. Country strong is what he often said about himself. But just the athleticism that's
Hmm.
there. I think Chop is probably more athletic. But yeah, he's one of those you project him to get better.
He's a
Uh,
scout's pick, like a high
yeah,
upside kind of
for
guy.
sure, man. But yeah, the next guy, man.
Well, let's talk about the next guy because we're going a little bit long, man. I wasn't expecting super long, but that's completely fine. Darius Robinson is the next guy. My notes on him was just has inside out versatility. Played D tackle in 2021, 2022, a little bit in 2023, but more defensive end in 23. 6'5", 285. Robinson pairs an impressive combination of size, length, power, to the defensive end position, and some teams obviously may view him as a defensive tackle. High effort player, relentless pursuit, 34.5-inch arms, utilizes his length to perfection on his bull rush snaps, consistently collapsing the pocket on quarterbacks. Solid run defense and gap integrity from the edge, holds his ground when facing double teams as a result of his power and length, and breakout season in 2023 with 43 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Um, he's the guy that I would like over Chop just because he fits more with the Demarcus Lawrence kind of role. He's a lot better in run defense, and he has the ability, like Demarcus Lawrence, to kind of kick inside and play some defensive tackle as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
And to think D Law was like 250 pounds when he was drafted, and currently he's playing at about 268 ish. And here Darius Robinson is already 285 pounds. So he's got an NFL ready body for a bigger defensive end. And I think that value, along with the current defensive coordinator and Zimmer, matches well with what Zimmer has done in the past with bigger defensive ends like Griffin, for example.
mm,
I would really play Darius more as an edge guy or like a five technique if you need it,
okay,
more
yeah,
so than I would as a defensive tackle. I think really in a 3-4 defense, playing that defensive end position, he'd even be better. When at the Senior Bowl, I was listening to two scouts from the NFL talk about him, just speaking about his size profile. One was like, you know who he is? He's J.J. Watt. And
mm, okay,
I was like, J.J. Watt. So then I go and I look at my Senior Bowl roster and I see I think it's like 6'5", 285 pounds,
uh huh,
34 and a quarter inch arms. Then you start thinking about like, what does his actual play speed look like? Play speed ain't so much Watt. But then I go to Watt's statistics or measurables and I see 6'5", 290,
mm-hmm,
34-inch arms, 11-inch hands. And I mean, it's just like that size
yeah,
profile does match. Now, not saying he's going to turn into a J.J. Watt type player,
yeah,
but I
that'd be,
think, yeah, you put him in that five technique and just let him work, or right there in a seven or a nine, setting the edge and pass defense, and then getting him to come along with more pass rush ability. There's great value. And we know, like in the past, where we use Crawford up and down the line,
mm-hmm,
where
yep,
they made the flip from the 3-4 to a 4-3, that kind of hurt him, but they used him still. Yeah, he's one of those players where you put him along that defensive line, and that adds great value for you. And I see why you would like him better than a Chop Robinson.
yeah. All right, man. Well, those were your top 10 for 24. This is the list if you guys missed any of it. So Troy Fontenot, Graham Barton, Brian Thomas Jr., Jordan Morgan, Jackson Powers Johnson, Jerzon, Johnny Newton, whichever one you want to call him, Byron Murphy II, Amarius Mims, Chop Robinson, and Darius Robinson. Um, and I was excited about basically all of those players except for Chop. I'm not super high on Chop, but that's just a personal preference. And with that being said, let's jump into a quick little mock draft. We're gonna go 7 rounds because you are a knowledgeable guy. You go deeper in this than I do. So it's gonna be fun to actually go 7 rounds instead of the typical 4 or 5 that I do. Um, but let's get it started. Typical guys go off. So a couple Alabama cornerbacks, so 3 straight Alabama players right there off the board. We got our guy Jackson Powers Johnson. We got Graham Barton, which we talked, Brian Thomas Jr. So hey, we've got the pick of the litter right here. Where do you think would be the best value? And especially with the amount of tackles that have went off, it looks like the only real tackle, Tyler Guyton. We might be looking. Let me pull up the other tackles real quick. Where am I at? Offensive tackle. Jordan Morgan is there. I would take Morgan over Guyton. It seems like you're in agreement with that with me. And then we got Graham Barton, and we also got Jackson Powers Johnson, which I'm high on. So where would you look to go? And let me pull up the wide receiver too, because we had him there too as well.
Man, Brian Thomas, go and give it to me.
All right, let's go. Brian Thomas Jr. with the first selection
Mm.
for our Dallas Cowboys. Um, Real quick, what do you think of Kieran Amagachi?
I just, somebody send me tape. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
haven't even been able to get my hands on Yale tape. And I tried to do the YouTube thing just to watch, a game.
hmm,
But from that view, you really can't just see what the footwork is like.
yeah,
So that's one where he is the one tackle and that's mentioned in the top 20 guys. I just don't know.
Yeah. The only thing that I've got to watch is kind of what you were talking about, the broadcast view of like the Holy Cross game or something like that. And so I liked what I saw. I thought he had good movement skills, and
Right.
he held, you don't, for pass pro and all of those things, I thought he looked fine. I just, yeah, there's no all 22
Yeah.
tape.
But everybody's
So
telling me he's going to be a second rounder. So,
we've got Jordan Brooks here, who is an official Cowboys 30 visit. We've got Chris Jenkins, if you want to go interior defensive line, another Michigan guy. I know that scares some people. Edrin Cooper, he is my linebacker 2 in this class. He can give you some edge
mhm.
rush ability from the edge. He's just a straight missile downhill. Decent in coverage as well. Junior Colson, I'm not. I'm more of a like than love with Junior Colson, um,
And
but
we see it the same.
huh?
We see it the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. Xavier Worthy. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. I just don't know how he pairs with the Cowboys necessarily,
Right.
like in
Right.
that slot role. Um, Xavier Leggett, I'm high on, and he has a great story. Both of his parents passed away in high school, and just
Mhm.
him grinding and finally getting on the field and just putting up those great numbers. So, those are all guys that I kind of would look towards. Jonah Ellis, possibly,
Mm. After getting
what are you
Fihoko
looking at?
last year, I'm like,
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
let's see. Out of the guys that you've mentioned, it'd be hard for me to pass on Edrin Cooper at this
Yep.
point because of what we know they need out of linebacker. But then again, that rush ability that he would be able to bring. So give me Edge Cooper in this spot.
I'm right there with you. I think he would be my best available player, and it fills a
Yeah,
huge need for this Cowboys team. So,
exactly.
I love that pick. Here at the third pick, my guy Bucky Irving. I'm a big Bucky Irving guy. I just don't think he necessarily fits great with the Cowboys because of he just
Right.
doesn't block. He doesn't pass pro. And so that's my biggest thing with him. And he's a smaller guy, anyways. You talk about um, what our guy, his name is escaping me right now, the true GM of the Cowboys, Will McClay.
Okay.
Will McClay, he's not a super, he doesn't like the super small guys. He's more of the prototypical kind of guy. We do got a Trey Benson right here, which is very intriguing. Former Oregon Duck,
Mhm.
transferred over to FSU. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., however, we already picked our linebacker. I'm not super high on Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Are you? How do you feel?
I'm not. I have him in that third round range, and if they were able to get him at pick 87, I'd be fine. Uh, but yeah, I think there are four guys that I have above him right now.
Okay. We got Cedric Van Pran Granger right there, which is, I know you brought him up. Mason McCormick as well, which we talked about him possibly playing some center. Dominic Pooney, um, is he more, does he have,
I
what do you
think
feel? Tackle?
so you mentioned Graham Barton has the most versatility of everybody. I think this kid has
Pooney
more
does? Okay.
versatility. He could play all five spots. Played left tackle for Kansas. Had some experience there at guard with them too. But at the Senior Bowl, they put him at center to give him a few snaps. Yeah, I think he can play any of those positions. Round three is tremendous value for him. But knowing that, I've got my receiver, got my
Hmm.
linebacker. I really need an instant impact player, either as a defensive tackle or I'm looking for my running back right now. And just looking at the Cowboys' top 30 visits, they've really focused in on the trenches in that linebacker spot. So I got my linebacker, but then also need my running back. So who's
Let's
available
put
for
up
defensive
running
tackle?
backs.
Trey
Let's put
Benson, I
up,
know.
let's put a interior O line as well, because we haven't got a center yet. And then what was the last position you said?
D tackle.
D tackle. Okay. Just running down the list real quick. Bucky or oh goodness gracious. I don't even have the PFF up on the board. What am I doing?
So
Hold
good.
on. I was wondering like you probably don't even know the names right here. Okay, here we go. Sorry guys. We got Bucky Irving, Trey Benson, Christian Mahogany, Cedric Van Pran, Mason McCormick, Ray Davis, Michael Hall Jr., Marshawn Lloyd. I'm a big Lloyd fan.
Me
Uh,
too.
Bo Limmer, Dwayne Carter, who's he's an interesting name. My guy Audric Estime, Cooper Beebe, Braylon Allen. Leonard Taylor kind of seems like he's eh. Um,
Leonard
but
Taylor, that he has to be a slasher starting out because he sucks with the periphery stuff. Um, doesn't have the contact balance, but I think there's some potential there as a pass rusher. But that's more of a day three pick. So far, Trey Benson is by far the highest rated player on the board for me. So I would take Trey Benson here because I think due to the
okay,
injury to Brooks, he becomes running back one in this class,
okay. Even over Cedric.
even over Cedric.
Okay, let's do it. I like this. I'm along for the ride. Obviously, I put my input in there a little bit, but I don't have any qualms with this draft so far. I think it's hitting needs and it's getting really good talent. Um, I want to pull back up center really quick and
Yep.
just see who we have. Tanner Bortolini, another Wisconsin guy, so you can have three
I
straight
think
Wisconsin guys back to back to back.
Hunter
Uh,
Norzard is much higher on my board than Bortolini.
okay,
And again, he's one of those guys that he played guard in 22. This past year, they moved him to center, so he didn't have a tremendous amount of experience. But I think he's got more functional strength than Bortolini. I mean, I don't think it's even close. That's where, to
okay.
me, Bortolini's a little bit lighter in the rear as far as power than what we had out of Biotish. So Norzard is one of those the guys I'd circle right there because of the value that's still on the board. Um, Again, what does defensive tackle
Jefferson.
look
Did
like?
Jefferson do anything for you?
Yeah, Jefferson out of the D lineman for LSU is probably the most consistent guy.
Hmm.
And I think fourth round does make sense for him. But
You'd still go
knowing
Hunter.
knowing that I need that center spot, I think I would go Hunter here.
Let's go. I have not watched Hunter, so I'm just taking you at your word. But like I said, we need that center and locking him down. If you say he's better than Bortolini, I'm gonna trust you because I actually kind of like Bortolini a decent amount. Um, so we've got wide receiver, we've got our linebacker, we've got our center, and we've got our running back. So this is really, kind of wherever we want to go right here. Um, maybe you possibly look at tackle. Let me pull these guys up. Obviously, I don't think the tackle stretch is great. Um,
All right. So I don't know why people aren't giving this guy his shine. He is a Cowboys visit, but Brandon Coleman out of TCU, if he is there in the fifth round and Dallas hasn't gotten a tackle,
this is
that's
sixth round right now, so
exactly. So
you want to lock that in?
I think he's like a fifth round value for them, maybe even a fourth. They don't have it. I'd lock him in right now.
Let's get him. I haven't. I'll be honest. I don't. I haven't been this deep into the draft like I have years prior. Curtis Jacobs. He's a guy that I like decently more than some other guys. The linebacker out of Penn State. Um, do you like him? Do you kind of feel like he could be a special teamer and with the chance of getting on the field later on in his career? How do
That's
you how do you see him?
Yeah, I think he is going to be more of a depth guy. I don't see him
Hmm.
turning into a mainstay or a starter, but he might give you some quality snaps here or there. Just depends on what the package is.
Got
I don't know if
Darius
he
Masu
has
down
the
here.
overall instincts. Now, that to me is one of those sneaky value picks that I would take, thinking
Hmm.
about double dipping at the position.
Trevin Wallace as well, 30 visit guy.
Love me, Trevin Wallace. He's a barrel bodied guy, 6'2",
Hmm.
241 pounds. Great speed that he turned out with at the combine. So yeah, you're naming guys that I think
Jordan
would
McGee,
make some
another
sense.
guy that kind of come up the ranks a little bit from Temple.
Yep, my
Um,
linebacker 9, I believe it is on my list.
Good name right there.
Yeah, I think I'd
Um,
go back up and I would go ahead and take Darius Muasau, linebacker.
Muasau is how you say it. Okay, there we go. Hey, let's log it in, and that is our draft, I believe. Oh no, we got one more pick. Okay, I forgot about those comp picks, son. Um, Rasheen Ali, 30 visit guy. We've already picked up our running back, one obviously, but looking at that 30 visit. um, chart right there. That's a guy possible. Blake Watson, you brought up a little bit earlier, another guy. Josh Proctor. Are you interested as safety? Obviously, he's a guy that's seen. He's a flavor guy.
Go to my interior guys again.
Interior O line or D line?
Yeah, D line. Sorry.
Oh, D line. Okay. The interior. Let me take off O line. These are the only guys. So you got Gabe
Oh
Hall, Tim
Lord.
Smith, and
Oh Lord.
yeah,
Evan Anderson probably isn't on their board yet, but he's out of FAU. He's a guy that I would pick here extremely late. But just looking at the guys we have available, um, man, you know what? Forget it. I'm double dipping at running back. Give me Rasheen Ali.
there you go. I haven't watched Rasheen, but from my understanding, he's an electric kind of guy.
Yeah, he's a nice mover. I wouldn't call him a twitch guy,
Okay.
but he's definitely got some shiftiness to him. Patient runner. He got really nice burst whenever he sees it. Tough as nails kind of guy, and he's more of a compact body. So you're gonna look at him and think, "Oh, that's small," but you get up on him in person, like him and Marshawn Lloyd. They're deceptively bigger than what you think,
Lloyd is a pet
especially
cat of
Lloyd.
mine.
Yeah, especially Lloyd. Lloyd's got some of the
Lloyd
best
has
contact balance in this whole
mm,
class.
just his ability to cut, suddenness.
Man,
I think his feet are amongst the best in the draft at the running back position. Man, I really really like Lloyd.
oh yeah,
Um, Unfortunately, we get it to draft him right here, but just rolling through the picks real quick: Brian Thomas Jr., Edrin Cooper, Trey Benson, Hunter Norzad is I
hmm,
believe how you say it.
yep.
Brandon Coleman, Darius Mausu. Did I say that kind of close, or how do
Yep,
you say
that's
that?
fine. Close enough. That's close enough. There's
Okay,
Lewis out.
Muasau. Okay, there you go, and Rasheen Ali. Um, Hey man, this is one of those drafts that fills the needs. Obviously, you would like to get a tackle earlier on the draft. A lot of those guys were off the board when we came up to pick with that first pick. Tyler Guyton is a reach at 24 for me. I'm glad
Right.
that we went with Brian Thomas Jr. and just got BPA, and it fills the need. Got Edrin Cooper, that's great value at 56 in my opinion. Trey Benson, almost even better value at 87. And then these other guys. Hey, I was leaning on Dom here. Obviously, Darius, I've watched a little bit about a little bit of. I don't have a full scouting report on him, but seventh round. That's great value from what I saw on tape. So
Yep.
I'm, yeah, I'm ecstatic with this draft. Um, and overall, man, I'm ecstatic with this whole episode. Coming on here, Dom. I appreciate you, man. I shot you the DM. I said, "Hey, man, would you ever be interested?" Shot me right back. Said, "Let's do it." I cannot thank you enough. If you guys have not followed Dom on Twitter, it's Dom W White on Twitter. He's with Pick Six Sports Media. Does a lot of good things over there with Nick Spoonie, all of those guys, and Matt O as well. So I can't thank you enough, and I just appreciate you coming on here, chopping it up with me, and we'll have to do it again, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate having you, being on your space. But
Yeah,
anything you need, man, just let me know. But yeah, looking forward to the draft. What is it? 2 weeks away now?
yeah,
Less
it's
than?
coming up here. It's gonna be an exciting night for Cowboys Nation. Hey guys, if it's your first time on my channel, please do leave a like. Consider subscribing to my channel. I'm only growing. I started my channel like not even a year ago. Grown a decent amount, and my Twitter account has been doing really well. So if you have not followed me on Twitter either, it's Boys in the Zone. My YouTube, you're probably on the YouTube channel, but YouTube /EJ, the number two Savage. And yeah, I do a new show every single Tuesday night, get new guests in here and just chop it up, all things Cowboys. So once again, Dom, I cannot thank you enough. We'll have to do it again, and
Yes, sir.
I'll have to tune into the Twitter Spaces a little bit more and chop it up with you guys.
Yeah, just jump up there, man.
All right, man. Hey guys, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Peace.